Hey, so somebody in the comments asked me if I had started the 7-day mental diet that I talked about on a video last week, maybe. Um, and if I'd had any revelations or anything like that. Was it over? How did it go? And I was thinking about it, and I did not start it ever. But that was because I started having a whole bunch of stuff to think about that wasn't it. I didn't want to put any restrictions on where what was happening was going, because in like the last 7 days, I would say there's been an extreme amount of mental shifting. And anyway, I'll get into that in a minute in case anybody's interested. But like I don't know about you, but I think I'm starting to come to the conclusion that I'm like really impressionable. Like if I just even talk about something, it'll start to be active for me. Like just talking about the mental diet, just talking about how I had some sort of like, I don't even know if I did this on that video, but even just reflecting on how the mental diet, like clearing out my mental space, seemed to provide like the fertile ground for some big like intentions to pop up and start to like be worked out mentally. It's like the same thing happened this time without me even doing it. I've noticed lately, like if I even read a suggestion about something and consider it for a minute, I'll find myself starting to kind of shift in the direction of whatever the idea was. It's bizarre. Like, I don't think of this as like a superpower. I think of this as a handicap in a way. Like I have to be extra careful what ideas I entertain, or they will start to create reality almost immediately. I guess it's a blessing and a curse. But anyway, I wanted to talk about that. I don't know exactly actually how much of this I want to talk about yet, because like I was saying in my video yesterday, I really have this tendency to try to analyze and button something up before it's really had a chance to like play out and reveal its true meaning. It's like an impatience, I guess, or just wanting to understand, or just finding it fun and wanting to analyze it or something. But I wanted to talk about how I have gone about like finding the source of beliefs and things like that that are creating the negative parts of my life, the parts of my life that I don't want to be there. And I you know, I've talked about this here before, but whatever. There will probably be some new twist on this, and I've got other things to say about it, but I have to kind of set it up a little bit. And you've probably heard this a million times if you've watched my channel, but basically in October of 2021, I was in a relationship. It was only like 4 months long, with somebody that I really like cared about and loved, actually, I think. And it's hard to say in retrospect when you're with someone for 4 months and you're with someone for 5 years. It's not the same type. It's not the same depth of relationship and everything. But like I really adored this person, and it was just not going to happen. It was just not a relationship that was going to work. And I found after I ended the relationship, so I didn't even get dumped. There wasn't even like that to get like over, I found it really hard to get past this relationship. And I was at a point where that really didn't make sense to me. I was like, this is fine. It's okay that we're not together. I'm actually relieved that we're not together. During the relationship, I had often found that I didn't like the disruption to my routine that this relationship brought about. I found myself like longing to just have control over my schedule, like all the time. I was like, man, I just want to like go home, like hang out and go to bed and like get up and go to the gym and like, and this relationship is constantly interrupting that, because like we'll go out and like do something, we'll like go out and go to the bars or something, and then I'm like hungover and I don't want to go and I was just like, I just don't like this. Found myself longing to just sort of be a homebody again. So I got what I wanted in that area, and it was definitely, I liked it. You know what I mean? I was glad to be out of that situation, but I just found myself unable to stop combing through the details of the relationship, looking for things that I had done wrong, where if I had done something differently, then the relationship would have worked out. Like this went on for weeks. And, there was only so much data to go through. And it's like it just kept going through it all over and over again. It was exhausting. And it was like I was observing this happening. I was just like, God, could you stop and go to sleep now? Like, who cares? Like, you did the right thing. It wasn't the right situation. It was just, it made no sense. And it really stood out that it made no sense, because I was at a point where, when this relationship happened, where I had my shit together in just about every single way. So I couldn't really like look around and say, oh, I'm in a pathetic state in this area and how embarrassing, and I really need to fix this thing. Like, you know, whatever. Like I probably could have done in every other relationship before that. I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. And to some degree, I think it is a good thing. It's a healthy thing. If, you know, at the end of a relationship, to go through and say like, what did I do wrong here that I could like work on? What do I not feel good about? Like I just had this learning experience, really. What do I feel like, you know, I was unfair about? Or what like of my shit did I put on someone else that I should really have taken care of myself? That's a big thing for me. Like I really think you shouldn't put your shit on other people. You know, I don't know. I don't think people should go into a relationship and just expect people to deal with things that they could personally work to resolve. You know, oh, you just have to deal with this aspect of my personality that I'm just ignoring. It's like, you know, you deal with your shit and let someone else deal with their shit, and then the relationship will probably work. If either of those things gets way off balance, somebody's doing all the emotional labor while the other one just kind of skates and stagnates. And that's where you usually find people that are unhappy and don't end up together. So I think it's healthy to some degree to do that. Especially if there was like an incident or something that you can point to and just go, okay, I did this thing. I can see that that was wrong. You know, whatever. But, you know, at some point, like that has to stop and you have to just let it go and like accept that there was something that you need to do differently next time. Now you're aware of it. You know, maybe you can identify the source and that'll make it easier for you not to just automatically behave in a way you weren't proud of. Okay, great. But like this went on over and over and over again. It was a loop. It would just loop through. You know, I'd have like 10 different complaints about myself. Oh, I worked too hard for this relationship. I should have had more respect for myself, backed off, and sort of had the guts to say, if he doesn't meet me halfway, then this isn't a relationship I need to be in. Where at the time, you know, because this was leading up to the thing I'm talking about was leading up to a major shift in my self-concept. At the time, I still had this damaged thing going on. And so the way that would play out is just accepting shit behavior from somebody that I shouldn't, letting it go when things would happen, staying together even after the point where I was like, this isn't going to work. And, you know, doing stuff like being overly willing to put in effort when somebody else should have been meeting me halfway, you know, or they might have even met me halfway, but it was like I was so concerned that they wouldn't because I was, you know, I had this bad idea about myself that I would overcompensate by offering to do things, or by, you know, if they did make some effort, like I'd meet them at the door with more effort, you know, metaphorically. And so that was something, you know, I was like, okay, I see that. I really like, I need to, you know, I need to have like more self-respect. I need to view myself as more valuable than I do. And that was really probably the source of every other little like outer event, like every other thing that happened between me and this guy that I didn't feel good about, that I was like embarrassed about or something, or felt shame about or whatever. It was all an offshoot of that. It was all like, I should have probably, you know, when I looked back at the relationship, I was like, first of all, I probably never should have gotten in it. Like I knew better at the start, but whatever. Anyway, this just looped and looped. And I was like, how many times am I going to go through this? How many times am I going to go through this thought process? Like, okay, this has been resolved. Like, stop thinking about it. There's no mistake here. It's all good. Nothing that you were going to do. It's not like if I did those things, it's not like if, oh, I had more self-respect, then all of a sudden that morphs this person into somebody who I was going to be able to have a relationship with. Like, that wasn't happening. Like, because of those things, I chose to be with a person with whom a relationship was not going to happen, like from the beginning. I don't know. These things really, they're not, I don't think they're that mystical when you look at them up close. It's like, yeah, you chose a guy that wasn't going to work out so that you could play out your thing, so that you could change or not. If you choose not because you ignore everything, then you will continue to play this pattern out forever. Anyway, homie, don't play that. I like to try to figure it out so I don't have to deal with it again. But anyway, I stumbled on one particular night when I was especially annoyed by this obsessive loop, and I was trying to go to sleep and I couldn't. I just thought this has to be like a mental disorder. Like, I wonder if I have a condition or something. Like, why won't this go away? And I've experienced this like a million other times with other people. What the hell is this? And I just stumbled on some information about obsessive loops coming from childhood abandonment. That's like something that happens. That's something that kids do when they're left by somebody. They internalize it, and somehow, whether they could articulate it that way or not, and I could not, they say, I was to blame for this, and I never want to be abandoned again. So now every time I ever have a relationship with somebody, I'm going to be hyper vigilant. I'm going to not miss any details, because I missed a detail here, which for me personally, my dad took off out of nowhere. There were no clues whatsoever, especially since I was a kid. I didn't know what was going on anyway, but there was no, oh, dad's leaving and this is happening. It was like, your dad is gone. So, you know what I mean? It's like I think that sort of internalizes for people, oh, I must have missed something here. And also for me, they say that like kids, internalize and blame themselves for their parents leaving. I don't really know like how I ever did that, but I didn't blame myself for my dad leaving, but I did internalize a feeling of just utter worthlessness. Like, well, he just left, and somehow over the years, I came up with supporting evidence for that, and I definitely was always very vigilant, like hyper analyzing people's words in my mind. And sometimes when I was younger, especially before I became a more refined individual, hashing this shit out, like, and by the way, I still do this with Gene, my business partner, my ex. I still do this. This still comes out with him. Like, since I feel so free, like I know he's not going anywhere ever. I feel a lot more free to be like, be like, well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? Or, he'll be like, I have to go do something. I'm like, what? What do you have to go do? Why aren't you telling me? You know what I mean? Like, I'll notice, I'll be like, this is different. This is not normal Gene behavior. He doesn't usually say stuff like that. He doesn't usually, just leave in the middle of the day to go take care of a task. Like, what's going on? I get worried, or especially there's been like any sort of negative interaction between me and Gene, I'll get worried that he's like mad at me. I'm not worried. I mean, probably deep down, there's still a fear of him just like packing up and moving, because that would be rough. Gene is definitely a part of my support system, but yeah, that still like comes out to this day with like people I'm attached to. So, but anyway, I noticed this and I made the connection thanks to just like a Google search that led me to the right place. And I said, oh, this is like an obsessive loop brought on by childhood abandonment. I never thought of myself as being abandoned, because my dad never took off and like left. He just moved out and, I don't know, came to see me once a week or whatever. So he was never like gone. So I never considered myself abandoned. And it was through reading that stuff that I realized, okay, this obsessive loop is coming from the original childhood wound. Next time the obsessive loop starts, instead of acknowledging it in any way, instead of giving it any credence, like instead of just validating it at all, I am simply going to remember like that this is a projection of the childhood wound, and I'm going to take that opportunity where there's like an emotional thing happening, and I'm going to address the childhood wound instead. Even though there's no connection, I'm not in an obsessive loop about my childhood wound. This is just like the 10,000th iteration of the wound exposing itself. So the next time that obsessive loop started, I just said there was nothing I could have done that would have changed dad leaving. It wasn't about me. It was never about me or my worth. It was, and from the adult perspective of being like 40 years old, which is around the age that my parents were when this happened, I was able to really validate that for myself. I thought about, if I was married with kids and I left, would that be because the kids were rotten? Obviously not. And I started thinking about other things, like, I've watched plenty of Nanny 911 in my day. Kids really just kind of reflect their parents. Like, the way kids behave can change with a different parental type figure in their presence just for a few days. So basically, I just, in that moment, kind of let myself off the hook. In that emotional moment, revisiting this childhood thing and just kind of like removing the beliefs that were just sort of there below the surface. And it was the most transformative thing I've ever experienced in my life. It took like 3 days of this. Thankfully, I had this recent breakup to bring up this obsessive loop. Every time it came up, I just said those words to myself. Nothing I could have done would have changed the fact that Dad was going to leave. It had nothing to do with me. And then, there would be like a sense of relief after saying those words, so I knew it was doing something. And then usually, because it was so shocking, you know what I mean? The experience of this was just like mind-blowing. And so then I would go more, I'd kind of like stay in that general vicinity of, wow, this is really about that. And then like more and more things revealed themselves. Like I started thinking about how I was actually the favorite of the grandmother figure in our family. Like there were a lot of like grandkids to pick from, and I was like her little pet. She loved me. And I'm like, wait a minute, if I was like such a rotten little piece of shit, why would she have just loved me so much? Because she was like, hardcore old lady, like didn't take no shit from no one. I'm like, dude, there were other family members that were kind of shitty and she hated them. So I was like, I must not have been that bad. And I just started thinking about it all, and just the whole thing just unraveled. This whole big, like, illusion idea about myself that I've somehow formed from that event happening, it just like dissipated. It just disappeared. There's just nothing left there from that event. It was so fast and it was so easy, and my life improved so dramatically over like just a matter of weeks that I was like, oh my God, okay, what else is doing that? Like, what other illusions am I living in about myself? This was before I ever even stumbled on Neville Goddard. So you can imagine how excited I was to stumble on Neville Goddard like 2 weeks after this. It was just perfect. But like I started thinking, and so this is where it kind of gets relevant to the question of if I had any revelations recently from the 7-day mental diet. I looked back on my life and I said, okay, there was this like core childhood wound. Like, what other things fall into that category? And that was like a singular event. So that was something obvious. And there were a few other obvious singular event type things. But then there were other things that were sort of like longer term exposure to things that were bad. Like, I had a pretty toxic best friend growing up. Her family was pretty toxic. I think the mother is a narcissist, and some of that narcissist behavior gets learned by the kids. And I was exposed to these people constantly. And so I had that. I'm like, all right, well, I know that was not good for me. I cut that whole thing out of my life more or less 20 years ago. And I still try to really, like, lately they've made a reappearance, and I've really tried to just like keep them at bay while not being a jerk. They had a big tragedy in their family a few years ago, and I saw all of them for the first time in like 20 years, and I just remembered so quickly why I did not want to be around them. But anyway, there's that had some kind of influence. My brother, I've talked a lot about my brother on this channel. I have a really good relationship with my brother now, and I've gotten a lot of really good stuff. Like, I would not have my business if it were not for things that I happened to just sort of learn from being around my brother in my 20s because of what he was doing with his life. So I'm really grateful to him, but he was definitely an influence in my life that was had good things and also a lot of bad things. So I have those two like long-term things. And then there's like, other stuff. Like, by the way, I'm telling you this because I think sometimes people don't think of their lives in these kinds of terms. If you can kind of break it up into, these were my main influences, you could like list them all out, that I think I drew something from that is probably negatively impacting my life today. It can be helpful because just being aware of it and separating it out, that rearranges things a little bit and then allows the possibility for insight to come and change everything. So, I also had a very, I don't want to name this person. It's like fucking obvious if you've watched my whole channel, but I I had a very negative influence in my life from ages 13 to 17. And that one, like after this whole thing where I had this big like shift about my dad and everything, I identified all these areas, but I wasn't able to connect to them in the way I was able to connect to this thing with my dad because of this obsessive loop, this thing in my environment that was like bringing it to the forefront. So I'm like, all right, I have this negative influence that was really bad that I know this has to be a source of a lot of the negative things in my life right now. Like this experience, what this did to me. But it's kind of big and multifaceted, and I also don't remember a lot of it because it was like kind of traumatic, and I don't know how that's affecting things. But I know it is. Okay, just kind of set that aside. I don't have anything in my life that's like poking at anything that would point to that. So, it's just like a matter of being patient, but kind of knowing it's there, and having like, if I look at my life and I'm unhappy in any area, just saying, okay, well, I know it stems from one of these things. And so it'll work itself out. Like it'll come up as long as I remember, as long as I remember this intention and be kind of faithful to this process of all this shit working out, as long as that's my priority, I don't have to worry too much about like making it happen. But so there was that bad influence at that age. And then there was just kind of like my relationship with my mom that like was all of the issues with weight and self-worth, like and growing up in the 90s. So there's all that stuff. That's like kind of a big glob. And that's been working itself out over the last 5 years, here and there, in like a million different opportunities for that thing to be re-examined and rewritten. So, this really, I think, took a lot of commitment. And I'm not sure it's like just commitment. You have to like want this, I think. But how can you not want it if you know how much it's going to improve your life? That's the thing. The only thing that would be standing in the way of being committed to this would be not, being afraid that you weren't going to be able to handle it, or that it was going to make your life worse, not better. Like working these things out, it's a permanent upgrade. It's like, I'm sorry, this is why I'm into A Course in Miracles right now, because it's saying all this stuff in different ways. It's like, the truth dispels illusion, and illusion is the source of pain. It's untruth is a source of pain. But so, I just like divided out all these different areas of, where I would say, okay, these things were all sources of bad conclusions. Like these were experiences that were negative to me. And almost certainly, I know I haven't like worked anything big out in this area. So there's probably still something there. By the way, just to like, in case I haven't said this, I don't think I have. Until I was 40, like literally until that night when I realized I was having an obsessive loop and entertained the idea that it was an abandonment thing, I had maintained and believed, this was true for me, that I had not been impacted in any way by that divorce. I don't remember any big emotions about it. I don't remember like I don't remember wishing my dad lived at home anymore. I don't remember wishing I saw him more. I don't remember feeling dissatisfied with the amount of time I spent with him. It just seemed like a non-issue to me my whole life. And I was like, wow, how did I manage to skate through that without like anything major happening? But it was literally the source of my entire concept of self at like the most core level. I am not even good enough to not be abandoned by a parent. It was never phrased in that way. It was always phrased as, I've always been kind of a bad person. Me and my crazy friend with a narcissist parent used to run around picking people's flowers out of their backyards. We were always bad. We used to prank call everybody. Dude, we prank called people so bad. Oh my God. We were always just little shitty kids. And I was just always a shitty kid. Stuff like that. Like those were the best examples I could come up with. And to me, it was enough to support that. I just had this idea, and I had a few examples of things that bratty kids do, I guess. And that was that. I'm just like, yep, case closed. Didn't really examine it any further. Just said, well, that was then. I know I'm shitty. I know I'm kind of a shitty person. Like, I know I came out kind of shitty, but I can just live with that shitty core and just create the, surface of myself to be a good person. And that's the best I can do. What else can I do? I've done that. I've done all I can, just got to live with this rotten core that I was born with. I lived all the way till 40 without realizing that was happening, or realizing it wasn't true, realizing the source, all of that. I mean, you can go a long time, if you can kind of objectively look at something that you went through and say, that can't have been good. Like, I don't see why, I don't see how it affected me. I can't see the effect. I can't see like the impact or what I believe from that necessarily. But it can't be good. Some part of my life that is not working right now has to be coming from that. I don't know what it is. I can't make the connection, but just, if you just get that idea, it will reveal itself eventually. But anyway, so over the last week or so, there's been a bunch of like rearranging that's gone on. I think just because I was talking about the 7-day mental diet and remembering how I had a core memory, like from during the last one. I had this like core memory, there's just like a handful of memories that stand out from childhood, and those always mean something. You always like were impacted by these memories that you remember from childhood, because there were so many. There's only a few that you remember. And I remembered this incident between me and my mom when I was like 5. It could not have been more than 5, where I said something rude to her, not realizing the impact it would have because I was fucking 5. And her reaction was like so out of the norm for what I expected from my mom. Like, I must not have had too much negative feedback from her at that point. I mean, I instantly internalized what I had done, what I had done. And that was just another thing where I was like, I'm a bad person. Because I told my mom, my mom bought me a record, and I said, Mom, I don't like records. And she got really mad. I remember, not really mad, probably not even really mad. Who knows? It was like 40 years ago. Who knows what it actually happened? But this was a thing that was imprinted. And this came up the last time I was doing the 7-day mental diet. It just like popped up out of nowhere. And I knew what it meant. It just like, I remembered this memory and I thought, oh my God, this is another one of those things where I felt like a horrible person, and I completely like did not understand the insignificance of this event. Like, I saw significance and reflected it onto myself at 5 and have carried this with me the whole rest of my life. And that, I think, was related to whatever, it doesn't matter. I've on this channel a million times talked about these weight and worth things that I've had, and I really wanted to understand the source. Like, where was the first time I ever saw food as something other than food? Like, did somebody hand me a cookie when I was sad once? I couldn't remember that ever. Like, I'm like, my mom would never do that. But I think that was the event, because that's what came up. And I don't recall anything with that relating to food, but I think that was probably the first time I ever felt the need to comfort myself in some way, and she was not available for that because she was the reason that I was uncomfortable. And so that kind of, I never again was like, I wonder where this came from. That satisfied that for me. I'm like, that's the reason I have that memory. I've remembered that memory a million times. So yeah, the last week I've had like all these things that are starting to come forth. There have been a couple things over the last few years where I've been like, these two things I know matter. And some of them are like, some of the aspects of these things you could draw like a direct parallel. So the two things are this period of time between 13 and 17 when I was, I would say mentally abused by someone. And I would say there was also a threat of physical abuse that if my dad were not present in my life, almost certainly would have crossed the line into physical abuse at some point. That's what I think. Because it was getting pretty close to that when my dad had to step in and Anyway, so there was that. And I mean, that was so awful and destructive, that period of time. There's no way it didn't do something major. Like, that's a personality shaping thing. And the weird thing about it is between 13 and 17, I was not like unconscious. I remember at the time being really proud of myself for maybe I was like 14. In dealing with this person, I thought to myself, I came up with this little mantra for myself that, because I would always try to figure out why this was happening to me. Like, why is this person attacking me constantly? Like, I'm a 14-year-old girl. Like, why am I constantly being attacked? And I just told myself, you can't reason with somebody who's unreasonable. Like, this isn't something that can be figured out. So my thing was, you can't reason with unreasonable people. So just divorce yourself from it and don't think about it, because you're not going to be able to figure it out. This is like a mental illness, you know. But at the same time, 13 to 17 is like very impressionable. And so, you know, I was thinking, okay, there's no way that didn't impact me. You know, it feels like it didn't, the same way it didn't feel like it impacted me that my dad took off. And that clearly did in a huge way. So I'm like, okay, I don't know what this is yet, but I know this is a thing. This is like the next thing I hope works out for me, because I'm sure there's a bunch of garbage happening in my life because of that event. It's in there to be discovered and let go. I can't wait. Bring it on. So that's been my attitude towards that thing. And then the other thing, which I haven't really had that same attitude towards, was when I was like 12. This was a few months after my dad died. No, moved out, left. And this was 1992, was a good year for me. A few months after my dad moved out, I had this huge falling out with my friend group at school. There was like 20 of us. And I loved these guys, honestly. You know, but I've always had an issue in groups of people because I can't stand when people are fake. And, you know, I like to talk shit about people. I always find it fun to like gossip about people. But at the same time, like, I don't know. I just fucking hate when people are fake. Like, I don't think being gossipy is a good trait to have, but there's a difference between being gossipy and being fake. Like, if you act like you don't actually, like, if you're gossiping about somebody, if you're trash talking somebody, and then you act to their face like you think they're a great person, that really fucking bothers me. I hate that, and there was so much of that shit. I mean, it was like 8th grade, so whatever. We were like 13. But even back then, I was just like, you know, I don't know. I saw a lot of that, and that was most of the trash talking that I did. And so this big group of friends that I had kind of broke off into factions. And it was a major like implosion in my life, because I don't know what I was getting exactly from that friend group. But what was really upsetting to me is that people that I considered to be really good friends, like girls mostly, but guys too, actually, like a bunch of them just like ditched me. Like, they just followed the herd to this other group of people who whose parents had, like, my parents like weren't poor or anything. Like, we were well off, I guess, but you know, like, there were members of this group who had parents that would just like let everybody come over and like hang out by the pool and stuff like that. And so a bunch of people that I really considered to be like my best friends just said, we're not friends anymore. I'm going with the pool crowd. And I was just like, wow, you guys have no fucking character. You know, I just, at the time, I was so disgusted that I was like, I am never, ever having any type of close relationship at the friend level again. Somehow this didn't like directly impact my ability to have like a romantic relationship. But like, that was another thing that I'm like, I know that impacted me, because like when Facebook came out, that one time when I was like 33, I had this really bad day seeing all these people, of course, like friended me on Facebook, even though we hated each other in high school. And I just like saw all these people. I'm like, holy shit, that whole group of people, they like turned into like the frat boy crowd, you know, and they're like taking lifestyle pictures and shit, and, you know, pictures of like 15 people from this friend group from 8th grade, like in Cancun. I just had this like really bad day feeling like, man, you know, it really sucks that like my life went this way or whatever. Just, I remembered having a really bad day about it back then. And being like, wow, like this pain is still there. This pain and this like judgment and sort of like hatred is still in there. And then I was like, dude, why the fuck am I even like looking at these people's lives? They're completely irrelevant to me at this point, like what they're doing now. The only thing that's relevant is this prior event. But when I was 33, I was not in the frame of mind to like, I didn't know what to do with that. So I just kind of abandoned it. But I have, you know, over the last week or so, I've been thinking about that. I'm like, you know, that was very impactful for me. I can see the direct impact on my life now because I have like zero interest in having like relationships that are friendships where I give anybody any power to affect me emotionally at all. I have very few of those. And the ones I do have are generally people that I had a romantic relationship with at some point. So it's like there's something about like the boyfriend type relationship that like bypasses this. I don't know why. And then I can be friends with them afterwards. I don't know. Maybe I just don't feel like I can emotionally connect to somebody outside of that. And then once I've emotionally connected to them outside of that, then the relationship can continue even after we break up. Like I've always been good friends with boyfriends for long after we break up. Everyone I've ever had. So even the shitty one that strangled me, I was even friends with him for like a year after we broke up. I still felt like I could talk to him and stuff. I don't know. But so I'm just like, God, you know, this isn't something I really want to address. Like this was probably the most painful event that's ever happened to me in my life. And so this is the thing where I'm just like, I want to avoid this. Like I'm okay with like the fact that, you know, like my best friend that lives here in the same town as me, we went to high school together, but we weren't friends back then. We got to be friends on Facebook later. And then she moved back here and we started hanging out, you know? And, but there's always been like an emotional distance between us. When we actually first started getting to be friends, I think I kind of let that guard down a little bit. And I don't remember what it was, but she did something that really hurt my feelings. And I was like, nope, like door slammed shut. We probably didn't talk much for years after that incident. Okay, I'm remembering what it was now. I had been providing her all this support for something that she was trying to do in her life. She was trying to do this really hard thing in her life, where she really needed like a lot of support. And I was there, like I was providing that like every day. And it was kind of taxing, honestly. You know, I kept reminding her why she was doing the things she was doing. Like she just really was like leaning on me hard for support. And then it got to a point where she was like sort of in a good place. And I said something to her like, you're in a good place, but don't get complacent, because I still think like you've got I still think there are some hard times to come with this. Don't get complacent because you're going to like fall off. And she had like this big reaction. I can't wait to prove you wrong about that. Like this fucking bitchy reaction. I was just like, you asshole, like, screw you. This is why I don't have any friends. And I never talked to her about that. I never provided her one more second of support about that issue. And I just said, you know what? You were right to not involve yourself with people. You know, it's like, if I'm going to deal with somebody's garbage like that, it's going to be somebody who is in a relationship with me, providing me with lots of other things. It's not going to be this fucking friend or whatever. So, and now we're friends still, but like, I don't go there. I don't go there with her anymore. It's just like, we are surface friends. I haven't seen her since June. You know, I went to her daughter's birthday party. Like, that's the extent of it. And, you know, like, it's like I could look at that and go, oh, it's not healthy to like not have a bunch of friends that you really love and that have the power to just like cause a bunch of drama in your life and all that. But I'm like, I really don't want that. Like, I don't want a bunch of drama in my life. And friends have always equaled, especially girlfriends, have always equaled drama in my life. But so I was thinking about that last week, because, sorry, this is like a really long video. I don't know. This is more for me than anybody else, but just to organize my thoughts. But I was thinking last week, because, you know, once I've identified something like that, I'm like, well, I might not want to deal with it. But I mean, I know that if I do, my life will get better. You know, maybe because I was a very social kid, I had like shitloads of friends. And even after that big event in 8th grade, I was a summer camp person, and I went to summer camp and didn't like, you know, I had all my friends there. So it's like I had a second friend group, and I love those people so much. I'll always love them. I have just like soulmate relationships with like a bunch of people I spent. Like we could not talk for 20 years and it'll be like no time has passed. So, you know, I can intellectually say, all right, well, that was a painful event for me, and I don't really know how, I can't really apply any of the things I currently, like I can't say, oh, nothing I could have done would have changed that. Maybe that's true, but in that scenario, I'm like, I mean, I was involved in that thing. I played a role in that friend thing blowing up back then. So I don't really know what the issue is. Like, I don't know what I took from that other than like, oh, you know, people are drama, but I mean, people are drama. So a lot of people are drama. So I don't really know what I took from that. So that's still kind of, but I'm looking at it and saying, all right, well, I don't have to know what it is. Like, it'll present itself to me as long as I'm willing, as long as I'm looking at that thing and saying, okay, I get that this is something from my past that is currently definitely projecting itself out into the world in some way. I'm probably not even detecting the way that it's impacting me negatively. Okay, I'm willing and open. I was thinking about this because I've noticed that I continue to have this like thing play out. So like the friend that I have now that like 10 years ago or whatever pissed me off with that comment, and I just like dropped her for a long time. That happened. So, you know, that was an experience that happened at the time. Maybe I could have done something with it. Like, it's too far in the past now. But like, I created that experience for myself. I put myself in that position again. I made myself emotionally vulnerable again in that way that I was closed off to most people. And it played out in a way that gave me an opportunity to do something. I didn't do anything with it because I didn't, wasn't there mentally. But then, so I created another event like this. And when I say created, I mean, I think when you create an event, what that means is you had like this big role in choosing the setup. So, I chose to interact with this person out of all the people in the world I could have chose to interact with. Why? On some level, I could probably detect that this would happen, but I made a friend a couple of years ago who I developed like an ongoing text relationship with that got pretty like personal. I mean, I don't know. There's never anything inappropriate about it. It was in a relationship with Matt. This guy was married. And so I'm just like letting down my guard. I'm like, man, like I really connected with this person. This is great. At the time I was thinking, I have my text relationship with my friends Cecilia and Stacy. And these are all like, think about it, like these are all like distant relationships. Like it's a text relationship. I've never spoken to either of them on the phone. I don't even know Stacy's last name. It's like this distant thing. It's like at a safe distance. But so I've always kind of had that, like friends at a safe distance, and they're never in close enough that they could do anything to me. So, with these people, like I was like, okay, this is nice. I really like having these people to talk to, especially since we're all like in kind of like the manifestation community right now. We were, whatever. Anyway, and so like I developed this relationship with this person, and then one day, like out of nowhere, literally like out of the blue, nothing inappropriate ever happened between me and this person, this guy. Out of nowhere, he's just like, my wife's not comfortable with our relationship, so see ya. See ya if I see ya in a group setting. And I was just like, wow. I'm like, okay. And, I was like, immediately, because it was like at a distance, this was just a very interesting incident for me to experience. I'm like, okay, this is a pattern repeating. Like, here's another person, here's another thing that feels like just an absolute, just like, fuck you. It's just another person that I'm like, dude, are you serious? Like, we had this relationship, and like on some level I'm like, well, I get it. I mean, if your wife's like, don't talk to that woman anymore, it doesn't matter how irrational she is, you can't really keep doing it. So I get it, like, you know, rationally, but I'm like, okay, how did I create this situation? Let's examine, you know, because I was looking back at it and I was thinking, wow. Of course, after the fact, I saw a whole bunch of flaws in the way I'd been looking at it, like the value I'd been placing on it. But what was interesting was when I first started being friends with this guy, Matt, my significant other, and Jean, my business partner, best friend, ex, both of these guys were like, don't talk to that guy. And I was like, why? What? You know, they were both like, just don't talk to that guy. I don't like the way I feel. You know, like Matt was like, just don't talk to that guy. Like he even got mad a couple of times when he knew I was talking to him. And it wasn't, I don't think it was like, at the time I was like, oh, are you just jealous? But I really didn't. I'm like, he just like has an opinion about this and he's mad that I'm not like doing what he says. But I had two people, probably, you know, the two closest people to me in real life were like, I really don't think you should talk to that guy. They never really gave me a compelling reason why. And I didn't see that, but I'm like, okay, what does this tell me? This tells me that I didn't see something here that other people could clearly see from the outside. So it's like when people get involved with a cheater, like when somebody goes out on a date and they're used to being cheated on, or that's something that they expect or think is just going to happen. They ignore the signs that somebody is a cheater, where if I were watching that date, I'd be like, gross, get away from this guy. It's like you just don't see, depending on where you're blind from these wounds or whatever. So basically, I chose to be involved in this situation. And maybe I even along the way thought like, you know, I don't think somebody's wife is going to be okay with him being friends with like a new woman. Maybe I even thought that. So it's like, I put myself in the position to experience that. But so I was like, okay, I created this situation and it showed up in my reality. Here it is. You know, this is in line with like the wound up from the friends. Okay, so this is coming up. And this week I was thinking about it and I was like, man, you know, when that happened, I really got a lot of support in talking about it from Cecilia and Stacy. These two people at a distance in a text conversation. And they were both like so great about it and not, you know, these two women are not catty. Like of the three of us, I'm probably the cattiest, gossipiest one. They're really not like that. And I was thinking about it this week and I was like, you know, I think that event happened because it wasn't that impactful to me in any other way. Like I wasn't devastated by the loss of the friendship or something, but really like the thing that stands out about that experience for me was being able to talk to these two women and like get these good insights about things and just kind of like have this support of two female friends. And so I was thinking about that this week and I'm like, I think that's why that happened, because even prior to that event, God, this video is really long. What the fuck ever. Prior to that event, even, I think with those two, like, you know, I would like nitpick, you know, sometimes I'd just be like offended by one of them or irritated and just kind of like, you know, it's like I was keeping them at a distance in a way by like nitpicking flaws. And since then, I mean, I just don't feel that way about them at all. Like there's nothing that they've done that like annoys me or that I get, you know, I don't know. I really think that was like kind of a healing thing for me, that particular incident. I can't imagine that thing is not still playing a role. I can't imagine that those two women supporting me at that time fixed everything. But it's just, you know, I think being aware of those things brings up events that you create through which you can then look at things in a different way or experience something in a different way, especially if you have the intention to be relieved of whatever it did to you or whatever you did to yourself as a result of it. So yeah, I don't know if I really, and then, so not to go too deeply into this, and I'm glad I haven't revealed this person's identity. I don't know how I almost just ended this video without bringing this up. So this was this like realization. The thing that happened with like the relationship ending and talking to Cecilia and Stacy about this was like, I think over a year ago. So that's sort of distant. I don't know. This week I just thought of that and thought, wow, I think that part of that was so that I could, experience the support of friends in a healthy way. For whatever reason, that came up this week. And then I mentioned on a video recently that I've been talking to a Reddit friend. And I said something in the video like, hey, Reddit friend, like, you don't seem to realize that I consider you a friend. You seemed surprised that I was talking to you about like something personal. I consider you to be a friend. Yes. And I got this big email. We'll just call it an email. I got this big email from the Reddit friend basically going through this whole thing about how kind of describing me and the way I had been in relation to him as a friend. And that's all great and good and important and everything he said. But I sat there and I was thinking about it and I was like, you know what? I've spent a lot of time in my life reading about avoidant relationships because I always want to understand people's behavior, and I've had relationships with people that didn't make sense to me. And then I read about avoidant behavior and I'm like, okay, that's what that was. Like, that explains it. So I've read a lot about avoidant behavior, and it wasn't until last night that I realized that from what this Reddit friend was describing to me about our friendship, that I'm basically an avoidant when it comes to friends. And it's obvious why. And this was really important for me to understand because I never thought of myself in that way. I never really saw it as a problem. But not only that, like in the moment that I kind of put two and two together that like I'm an avoidant with friends, I immediately thought, how do I feel when friends get too close to me? It's anxiety, it's smothering, it's I would prefer to not have you around. I'd prefer to just disappear for a few months. That's the feeling that I get with most people that start to like, in my interpretation, I'm like, God, this person's so needy. Like this person's acting like I'm their girlfriend. Like this woman who's a friend of mine or whatever is like acting jealous and possessive. Like they're my boyfriend or something. Like I would always just like push that away and just drop it. And I thought, wow, this is what people who have avoidance with relationships feel like. I'm like, this is like such a big deal to me at 52 minutes. Like, I feel like in that moment, so many moments of pain in past relationships that I've had with people where they couldn't be what I wanted them to be. I feel like it was just, I don't know. I suddenly just like really related and understood. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I can't really make this not be a thing. It's not like if a friend wants me to be closer and I can't and I act avoidant, that if they were just good enough or if I just liked them enough, then I would like overcome this childhood wound immediately and just like be what they want me to be. Like I can't tell you the number of times I've had a relationship with a guy where they turned out to be this way with me and I took it totally personally. Like it's just I've spent almost no time single in my adult life, and it's just I've just met a lot of these types of people and connected with them because I think it's easy for those types of people to connect with me at first, but then it's like the door slams shut. So I've experienced that a lot. There's like this initial feeling of openness, but then it gets too close and then they can't do it. And I always took that personally. And I just felt like such compassion for all of those people in that moment. I was just like, oh, it's not that it was me or that like you had a problem with me. It's that the level of emotional intimacy that I have in a romantic relationship with somebody is just way, way too much for you. Like whatever happened to you, it affected this in this way. Because for me, it's like, it's the exact same thing. It's like, I have only right now, I hope this can be resolved. I don't know. I don't really care, honestly, but that's just part of the problem. I think, like a friend that wants like a lot of emotional intimacy with me could easily experience that. Like, I understand how it feels when somebody wants more from me than I want to give because of this experience that I had. That's directly why. I mean, it's clear. Like, and the other experiences that have happened since then, it just kind of reinforced it. So I don't know. That was like a big moment for me. This just happened last night. It was a big moment for me to realize that I can actually directly empathize with all of the people who have been incapable of having an emotionally, like, really close and intimate romantic thing with me. In that instant, I was just like, oh my God, I get you. And I felt sorry for them, because I was like, man, I feel like this is like, I feel so lucky, I guess, that, not lucky, I don't know. I'm glad for my particular set of problems. I feel like they're things that I can handle. I would much rather, I don't know, I guess if I could have a big, amazing, intimate relationship group of friends, maybe then it wouldn't matter to have an intimate partner. But I don't know, I'm really glad that I don't have that with a romantic partner. Like, I don't have that block there. But I felt so like, I don't know, I just felt like, oh my God, I get you. I get you now. Like, I never realized I could relate to that. And I don't spend a lot of time thinking about my, like, resistance to having really close friends. And I'm guessing most of those people don't spend a lot of time thinking about their resistance to having a really intimate partner, or they just find a partner that also doesn't really want that and it just works for them or something. But that was, so to answer the question, for me, that was a pretty big revelation, because now I see myself in a different way. Like, that, this now to me can be classified as, I don't know, it's not just like a big nebulous thing. It's not like, oh, I had this childhood experience with these friends and now I don't like to have friends, and who really cares, because I like spending most of my time alone anyway. Just like, it was just really dismissed and not ever really thought of. And now I'm like, okay, well, it was impactful enough that I think I could classify myself as an emotional avoidant when it comes to friends. That's not healthy. It's not benign. It's probably having a bigger impact on my life than I even realize. So, things will happen now to reshape that. They always do. But yeah, that's something that happened. It's pretty big. But so I want to make this video just to talk about that for myself. Free online therapy session for me. But I wanted to just also kind of talk about how, like, I broke all these events, like these influences, up into sort of compartments. So there's like, there's the dad leaving event, there's the friend fallout event, there's this longer period of time where I was subjected to mental abuse. That's definitely, like, sort of compartmentalized, like, okay, 13 to 17, this influence. Then there's sort of like, okay, got the lifelong thing with mom. That's a thing. I think the things that are like throughout life, you probably have so many incidents that it sort of unravels in the same way, like over time. That's been my experience with, like, the weight thing over the last 5 years. And then there's like, okay, the influence of the kind of abusive, negative friend who, by the way, that abusive and negative friend from my childhood, whose parents are narcissists, she incidentally was loyal and stuck by me through that whole thing. She, at least in that way, like, she didn't ditch me. She liked abusing me too much, so she stayed around. But incidentally, she was not somebody who betrayed me in sort of spectacular fashion. She just betrayed me in other small ways over time. I'm not joking about that. But, like, so there, and then there's my brother. I'm like, okay, well, he probably influenced me negatively. But again, that's like over life, and it's counterbalanced with all this benefit. So that's kind of a complicated one. But that's how I look at that. Brother influence, toxic friend influence, mom influence, abuser influence between these 4 years, these ages. And then there's this incident, dad left. There's this incident, if you can kind of like condense it down to one day, that's more of like an incident. If it's like a long-term influence, then that's like a different thing. But so it's like you could almost make a list. For my life, I could make a list. These are the things that impacted me. These are the things that shaped me. These are the sources of, let's just say 80-20. We'll go with the Pareto principle. 80-20. 80% of my problems in life are coming from 20% of my experience. So 80% of my problems are coming from these isolated incidents and influences. And for me, that's helpful. And I don't know if other people think about that. So I wanted to really spell that out because it can be helpful to look at your life that way. And then, you can kind of say, well, I think I know what this thing did. I think I know what this thing did. But I'm at least aware that there's this event here that has to have impacted me negatively, even if I don't know what it is. For me, organizing it like that helps it to start to work itself out, especially if you have a strong intention for that and you're courageous and you're willing to face up to whatever it means, even if that's painful or uncomfortable or something for a period of time. All of that being said, I wouldn't consider any of the things that happened to me to be like overly traumatic. None of the things that happened to me were physical in nature, and I think those are their own thing, so I can't speak to that. I've heard enough other people talking about psychological things, like Tim Ferriss, for example. He had some very complex physical abuse, sexual, as a kid, and didn't talk about it. Tim Ferriss is he's like my celebrity soulmate. I love him. I never want to hear a negative thing about that guy. If he ever does anything bad, don't tell me, because I just love him so much. But he came out and courageously talked about all this stuff, like how hard it had been for him to face it, and how he wasn't planning on ever talking about it or doing anything about it till his parents died, because he didn't want them to know it had happened. And just all this stuff, it was so big that he talked about all that stuff. But he said specifically that going through dealing with that for himself, he really had to have some professional assistance with that. It wasn't something that he wanted to go through alone, and that he didn't feel he said, I think, I wouldn't be here if this person who had also gone through this was not there for me at key moments. He didn't spell it out, but when you say something like that, that's pretty serious. I wouldn't be here if this person hadn't been there when I was experiencing this aspect of dealing with this thing from my past. So I think that, based on Tim Ferriss saying that, there are certain things from your past that really you shouldn't be expected, or you shouldn't expect to deal with on your own without some outside help. But that's something that will find its way to you, or that you'll find if that's what you want. But yeah, I just wanted to put that little disclaimer on there. I don't feel like the things that I've experienced, I feel okay with the idea of these things revealing themselves to me, and I'm confident in my ability to handle whatever they are, because I just don't feel like I experienced the worst of the worst, which I know a lot of people have. I know personally, in my personal immediate circle, multiple people have experienced just horrific things as a child that I never was even in the vicinity of, really. I might have had the threat of some of it, but it never actually happened. So that's just my, I think, disclaimer that, you might, just because you have an intention, might not mean you necessarily float through it by yourself. But these are the things that are creating you, and you're what's creating your world. So really, this is at the heart of everything. A lot of manifesting stuff talks about just bypassing this. That phrase, spiritual bypassing, that's pretty much what this means. It's just, instead of actually dealing with any of this stuff, it's just installing a new idea. So, if I think I'm rotten to the core, don't ever make the connection to the thing with my dad. Don't ever work through in my mind that it wasn't true, that it legitimately isn't true, that I made that up. Just skip that whole step and just go straight to, I'm an awesome person. Given my experience, I have no idea how that could possibly work. How does just telling yourself over and over again that you're a good person erase the fact that deep down that you're not? I don't see how that could possibly work, but maybe it does. I don't know. Maybe it does. I'm legitimately open to the idea that for some people, just putting a new idea in there drops the whole old thing, and you never have to actually convince yourself of it. You just repeat something over and over again, and eventually, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, I'm just going to leave this here. I hope that in any way helped anybody with anything. to answer your question, commenter from Russia, I believe. Yes, I had a major revelation in the last week, or I'm on the verge. There's been some other stuff that happened too, but that is still in the works, and I can't talk about any of that stuff yet, but this has been one of the most revelatory weeks of my entire life this last 7 days, since I just brought up the 7-day mental diet. So I'm going to go ahead and recommend that you do it, because that happened without me even doing it. I'm going to, though, still. All right, have a great day. I'm sure that was just exactly the light and happy material that you wanted to consume at like 9:30 in the morning. But anyway, have a great day.